Hi, baddies. Welcome back to another episode of Terra's Baddies Club. I am so excited today because I have taken a little bit of a break. I took a month and a half off, and it was so nice. I needed to get my mental health straight. I was also helping support my ex through his time with his dad possibly getting out for parole. Luckily, as of August 20th, 2025, his dad is staying in for at least 5 more years. And that is done and over with now. So I can go on with my normal life as well. Because when that stuff happens and you have your own trauma, it could trigger you in your own trauma. And I also got rid of a job during that time. I no longer am baking cookies for a company. I'm just doing it myself now. That work environment started to get a bit toxic. I wasn't listened to about certain health code violations. And then also, I found out I was getting paid below minimum wage for 7 months. I ended up getting the back pay for that. But after that happened, it just didn't feel right to be there. And everyone was getting paid more than me, and I was 34. Also, I have a foster puppy right now, so please excuse the crying, and you can see her on the camera if you're on YouTube. But I had to get rid of that situation, and it was kind of a forced quit situation where she had to step back into the bake due to financial reasons as well, and then offered me one shift every Saturday from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. So that wasn't going to work for me, but I am done with that job now. I'm transitioning to more content out there, starting to do my baking myself more so. So if you guys need cookies shipped to you guys, let me know. I can always ship out cookies. I got all my stuff that I needed to get, and it is great. So we're going to put out more content. I'm going to be interviewing more people. I'm going to have a foster dog video coming out tomorrow. So check it out then. And I have 2 days from now, the foster dog video is coming out. And then tomorrow, I have a video coming out from a trip to Austin. So a lot of things coming out. But enough about that. Let's get into today's guest. I have Norma Buster coming on. She is the chief of staff at CA Goldberg Law, PLLC, where she began as client relations coordinator and now oversees business operations, communications, and client intake. With a background in trauma-informed direct victim services and specializes in guiding survivors through case evaluations and helping translate their stories for legal advocacy. Beyond her day-to-day work, Norma hosts a podcast on sex, tech, victims' rights, and is frequent speaker, a writer, and a podcast guest. As a sex-positive victims' right advocate and online sex worker, she brings authenticity and courageous to her platform. She also has a fan only account. So we're going to talk about that because I think it's really rad that she really took her power back with her fans only account too. So we're going to talk about that today. So let's get into this episode with Norma Buster. Hi, Norma. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to have you because I followed you since my friend Lenora Claire sent me like your way or my way. And so I'm excited to connect with you today. Welcome.
Thank you. Yes, love Lenora, and I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you. So I think that you have a really interesting survivor story. Would you mind sharing that with me?
Yeah, sure. I can give you like the short version and then we can get into it if you want. But basically, back when I was 19 years old, about 10 years ago, I broke up with my ex boyfriend of 2 years and he began stalking me for months. And that involved things like lying about tragedies happening to his family, threatening and faking his own suicide, and then finally threatening me with my private images that he had from when we were in a relationship. And then he did end up eventually posting them. And I was in Jersey, which at the time was one of 3 states with a law criminalizing the non consensual dissemination of intimate images. But I was turned away by the police again and again. And so I, through the help of my parents, found a lawyer to help me, Carrie Goldberg. She's one of the only people talking about this thing now we call image-based abuse. Back then we called revenge porn. And she was the one who ended up helping me to get like a restraining order, criminal charges and everything. And a couple years after that happened to me, I started working for her firm. So that's kind of how I got here today.
I
The
love
short
it.
version.
I love it. And I think that when trauma and tragedy happen in a sense and you make something beautiful out of it, it's just you keep on growing forward and you keep on healing in a sense.
Definitely. And like, I didn't know that I could use my story for something powerful. I also like, I've said this so many times, but I think it's so important. Carrie was the first person to tell me that it wasn't my fault. And I didn't know that until she said it. And she was a stranger, you know. And while I was going through my case, she was being profiled for the New Yorker. And so she actually asked me, like, do you want to be interviewed as a part of this? And I was like, okay, sure. And so this like New Yorker journalist, Margaret Talbot, um, came with us to the sentencing day of my ex and helped me prepare as I read aloud my victim impact statement. And then my story became a part of this New Yorker article. And so to see that, like, something that was so horrible for me, I could actually talk about it and know that it would be used for something greater. And that then I could use what I had learned from it and like how it had made me stronger, or I should say, like, how I made myself stronger after something like that, that I could turn it into a career too. Like, I never could have imagined.
Yeah, I think that's just so beautiful because I mean, I have my trauma that I've gone through, the crazy story, and there's times where your trauma overtakes you and you don't know what to do. And even the career that you had or did have in a sense, it doesn't make sense to have it anymore.
Yeah. I think I was 19 when this
Okay.
happened to me. So it was a critical moment. I was in college, I was working retail, and I continued on with college, continued working retail. When I graduated from college, I actually moved to Spain, was teaching English there, was like, I'm just going to get out of the country, like, just want to travel. And then I'll come back and I'll figure it out. I was starting to feel at that point like I wanted to do something meaningful, maybe somehow use what I'd been through. And it was also like the Me Too movement started when I was in Spain. And so I was like bubbling up with like, what am I going to do with this thing? Like, how do I use it? And Carrie and I had kept in touch over the years. And so when this position opened up for client relations coordinator, so I could start as doing intake and being the first person that people would speak to when they contact the firm, was a foot in the door. It was a way that I could actually start to use what I'd been through. And so I applied for the job from Spain, got the job, and then came home early to start it. And like, I didn't even have to think twice about it.
Yes, I love that. I've heard nothing but good things about the firm as well. And I've seen also there's been like celebrity clients with you guys as well too.
Yeah, yeah, we've had some pretty high profile cases between like things you might have read about, like representing victims of Weinstein, and like some other cases that have really uh, hit mainstream press, but then also the cases that you'll never know.
Okay, I love that. She seems like such a good person. I think I've had a few conversations with her, but it's probably been over just Instagram.
Yeah, no, Carrie is great, and it's been um, really like interesting and fun to have this relationship with her, where she started out as my lawyer, and then became my boss and also is like such a mentor, but then someone who's like very personally important to me, and we feel that way about each other, and it's just really nice to have somebody who like cares so much about your growth, and she's like that with her whole team, just like cares so much about every single person here. And of course it's a brilliant team to work with on all levels.
Oh, that's great. I think that it's important to have someone that cares so much and someone that has such a community, because when you're dealing with the trauma, it's scary to go to an office and go tell your story for the first time. How do you start to take the client intake for I know we talked about you do an hour with them?
Yeah. So at this point, I'm not doing the like initial intake calls. We have a client relations coordinator who does those. But then I'm kind of the next steps. People do case evaluations with me. So if they are looking to become a client of our firm, we'll meet for about an hour and go through in detail background about themselves, about the offender, if there is one. And then we go through like a very detailed timeline of everything that's happened, along with how it has impacted them and what their biggest priorities are in hiring an attorney.
Okay. And then you've dealt with so many survivors as well. How does it feel taking in their story while trying to also help them and then, not get re traumatized with your own story?
Yeah, at this point, it's been thousands of people that I've met with and stories that I've heard, and I was thinking about it the other day. I'm like, wow, that's a lot of like stories to kind of just take in and then let out in some way. I realized very early on when I started the work that I was going to need to start therapy and make sure I was taking care of myself. So that was one key thing, was like doing the work. I never really found that I'd get like triggered during a client interaction. It was more that like after work, the dread would and like anxiety would start to hit me, and it's like, oh, I have all this stuff that like I haven't dealt with. So that was a big part of it. And then, I wouldn't be able to keep doing this work full time, I think, if I didn't have ways of like keeping some separation while also like not letting myself become completely desensitized. And one thing that like really stuck with me throughout all of this was that we are a part of the solution, right? Like that's really helpful. I don't think I could be a therapist, for example. Of course you're helping someone, but like listening to someone's problems and emotions, but not with like an aim of like, this is the information I need today, that would be really hard for me. Whereas if I like have a goal, I know I need to get this information because I'm trying to help them, and I need to get this information to the next person to evaluate, meaning our legal team. It just helps a lot to like not let myself like get sucked in too much with the emotions. I can be like compassionate without feeling it myself,
Okay.
and I think that also comes from like just personal experiences through life. I've always kind of been good at like being the calm person. Like if I know that like I have to help somebody through something, it's like this like mode comes over me and I'm just like, all right, helping mode.
I feel that too. It's funny because I could be a hot mess a lot of the times, but then when someone else is a hot mess, I get my shit together and I'm like, okay, I'm there for you.
Exactly.
And it totally makes sense because when I watch documentaries, I'll watch true crime stories and I'm watching for how they're doing it, the ethical nature of it. And I kind of am not desensitized to it, but I'm just compartmentalizing it.
Yeah, I think it's compartmentalization, because it's like it's not that I don't like, it's not that I don't feel a thing hearing something horrible, right? I do, like, and I think a lot of it for me, I channel into like I'm more like outraged at like the systems that allow this and continue to allow this to keep going. And sometimes I am really moved by something, somebody has been through, and it stays with me. But you kind of have to be able to compartmentalize and to say, like, okay, I'm not going to stick on this one thing because I have to get that done to help somebody, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Now, this is more so a question for myself, but how do you help the people that you cannot really help? Because there will be sometimes I get people coming to me and they have to clear their name of everything before they can even start to do anything for themselves.
Yeah.
And it sucks when I'm like, okay, like just try to get press on this.
It is really hard. And that's probably one of the hardest parts of my job, if not the hardest, is telling people, I'm sorry, we can't help you. But in order to be able to help as many people as I can, I need to be really clear for myself on like what is possible and what's not. You know, arming myself with like resources for people and arming our team with resources for people is really important. You know, if they have this kind of situation, let's refer them to this nonprofit. Or if it's this kind of situation, you know, that nonprofit handles that kind of thing. And we can't ever like make guarantees, but if we can offer resources, we do. But the reality is, like, we are only human, and it is not like it's not our job, it's not your job to save every single person who comes to us. We can only do as much as we're physically capable of doing. And if we try to like exceed that, we're only going to be doing a disservice to people that we actually can.
That is true, and that is a good way to put it. I am thankful that you said that because there is so many people that because coercive control is so complicated, and with the court system, like it's not fully recognized with a lot of places.
Yeah. That's one thing I tell people. We are working up against the limitations of our legal system here. So just because we might say something isn't viable in court or not possible for us to do doesn't like take away any more like how fucked up it is. Can I curse on here?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
It doesn't change like how fucked up it was, what happened to you, or how shitty the scenario you're in right now is. Like, I hear you. That's valid. We just may not have the legal options for you available right now.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good way to put it. And then, like, do you tell people to get press? Because I also know when you send them to some organizations because of like the legal stuff alone, they won't take certain people.
So I might like refer somebody to a nonprofit, but I cannot provide legal advice.
Okay.
And so I avoid giving any advice. I will never suggest to somebody you should go to press because I know that there might be legal implications to that for them.
Oh, yeah.
So I always say, like, listen to your attorney. One thing that I think is a big concern is defamation lawsuits. You know, we've represented many people who have been sued for defamation after speaking out about what they had been through. And they were telling the truth, but you could still be sued even if you're telling the truth. You still have to defend it.
Yeah.
And so I'll never discourage somebody from going to the press, but I also never want to like push someone to that just because of potential risks, and only really an attorney can advise someone on like what they might be risking.
That's true. Because also, like, a lot of the times there's gag orders, there's things that I don't know about.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the way that I think about it, and I'm not an attorney, just to be clear, but the way that I think about it is like these defamation lawsuits are kind of like the retaliation from the Me Too movement. So, like, we've really encouraged people to speak out about what they've been through, and we we should encourage that, right? For survivors not to be shamed into silence. And at the same time, what abusers are doing is they're getting outed as abusers and then they sue for defamation. And now you have a survivor who has to pay an attorney to
Yeah.
defend it. And so I think there needs to be more support for those survivors who do speak out, you know, monetary support for those who need to like cover legal fees,
Oh,
things
yeah.
like that.
Well, I always think of Stormy Daniels when it comes to that because she, fought and she lost that case. And that was a lot. Yeah, but your podcast is great. Let's segue into that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, I started Oral Arguments in 2022. And it's a podcast all about sex, tech, and victims' rights. It has 2 seasons, and I do plan on releasing a third. It's just a little bit delayed, but yeah, I've had experts in the field of like image-based abuse and victims' rights, and people from other countries, from Australia and Portugal, Italy, who are doing this work, as well as like people who are like sex workers, rights activists, and talking about like the challenges in our movement, and just like kind of getting real about certain things. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I wanted a space where we could talk about the topics that like I deal with every single day in a little bit more like slightly edgy way, like a little less
Okay.
filtered. And it's been a lot of fun.
Okay, I love it. So when you talk about sex, is it like early call her daddy day vibes?
No, not that kind of podcast. But I've had like kink educators, So like we
Okay.
talk about like trauma and healing from trauma and like things that might be like sort of taboo. One of my favorite episodes was with Mix Sizzle, and they are a kink sex educator. And we talked about like consensual non-consent, which is like
Okay.
such a touchy subject for so many people. And I was able to ask questions that, like, as somebody who represents people who are dealing with sexual violations, that this is a very nuanced topic, right? And I like to explore those things, where consent, what scenarios might consent not be as clear or not be believed. If somebody takes away, if somebody says, like, you can wake me up from my sleep and have sex with me, what kinds of things should they be putting in place in order to make sure that consent is had in every scenario? And like, what kinds of body language things should they be paying attention to? How do like they keep each other safe? Like things like this that are just beyond the legal system.
Yeah, I'm like, well, I love in the middle of the night sex. It's just great. But I feel like there's always like, I'm not normally someone that wakes up in the middle of the night. So I'm like, just like an owl.
Right. Yeah. And like that in particular is an interesting thing because like a couple can have an agreement that they have consent in those scenarios to do that. But then that doesn't mean that like you can do whatever you want. A person can still feel violated after. We also talked about consent accidents versus consent violations, which I thought was super
Okay.
interesting. Like a consent accident might be where you negotiate everything that's going to happen ahead of time, and then it just doesn't feel right when it does. Or, hey, I thought I was okay with that. Turns out like I actually felt really uncomfortable. That's an accident, right? The impact might still be the same, but the intention was not to violate someone. Whereas like a consent violation is like you disregarded someone else's boundaries. You did not bother to see if you had consent.
Okay. Okay.
Impact might be the same of those two things, but the intent is very different. And so I just find these topics really interesting.
Yeah, no, it's so interesting because I feel like in school, like just in high school and college, but I didn't really go to college. Like those college years, there was guys that just really didn't understand. There's a lot of guys out there that don't really understand consent. And I feel like I'm so easygoing and I'm just like whatever that sometimes my no is soft. So like a lot of the times that wasn't taken seriously. And those guys like go that. And then I think of another situation where now I'm just having all my flashbacks come up. Well, I'm like, how do you do this when so
Yeah.
that's why I asked that question. And I think I love that you have these conversations because also, like a hot girl like you, there are going to be guys that pay attention and then hopefully it clicks to them.
Oh yeah, like I always think about like with my OnlyFans, like I love posting like sexy pictures on Instagram and then also like posting about political stuff in my stories. And like I know all these guys, you're clicking on my stories, so like you're gonna get educated.
Yes, get educated. Do you ever feel like when you date guys, you educate them so much that then they
Yeah.
start thinking about their entire life?
Oh yeah, completely. Completely. Like I've given so many first date lessons on Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act about like big tech liability.
Okay, wait,
I'm
what is
always
that?
teaching them.
Wait, what is the tech liability thing?
Okay, Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. Communications Decency Act was a law from 1996 that was overturned except for Section 230, which has been interpreted in courts to give tech companies complete liability, immunity from liability for third party content. So, like, you can't sue Meta for something defamatory that somebody posts about you on their platform.
Mm-hmm.
Where this gets to be like a problem is when you think about the fact that every other industry, if you're harmed by a big company that has the money and power to prevent the harm or to stop the harm, you have the ability as an individual to have your day in court. Like, that's the good thing about the American civil legal system, right? We as individuals are able to have our day in court with a big company that harms us, or a person with more money that harms us. And with the tech industry, Section 230 is what stops that. And so the easiest way that I can kind of visualize it for people, I'll give you this example. Our client, and now he's become one of like my close friends, Matthew Herrick.
Okay.
Back in, I believe it was 2016, 2017, he broke up with his boyfriend, and his boyfriend began stalking him and impersonating Matthew on Grindr, the gay dating app.
Yes.
And he got 1,100 men to show up at Matthew's home and workplace in a matter of like 5 weeks or something like that.
I remember this story now.
Yeah. Yeah. And so our attorneys sued Grindr on product liability theory, saying your product, the way it was designed, is making it too easy for this person to do this to Matthew. You know, he could get killed. And because Matthew and his like loved ones were reporting the accounts over and over and over, and sometimes it would come down, sometimes like they would come right back up, you know, and so sometimes they wouldn't go down. And the case was dismissed on Section 230. And so this is the law that tech companies use basically as like a get out of jail free card. They're saying like, no, we don't have to pay your client anything for the damages that we've done because we don't have to because of Section 230. And so our firm has been in the fight to create some carve outs or get around that in like product liability theory along with like seller negligence. So we have a case against Amazon for selling a chemical that had no household use and was being purchased for suicide. We represent dozens of families where kids were buying this after Amazon was put on notice about the use of this product. We also shut down Omegle. Do you remember Omegle? Were you on like
What is that?
Okay, it was this video chatting site.
Kind of like Vine?
No, it was there was another one.
Like Marco Polo?
No, I'm gonna look it up real quick because I'm
Or
like
Chat Roulette?
chat roulette.
Okay.
That was the one I was looking for. So Omegle was like chat roulette, where it was a video chatting site and you can randomly get matched with a stranger, and so it was matching kids with pedophiles basically. And so we represented somebody who, when she was 11 years old, was matched with a pedophile, and she was trafficked online for years. And we ended up filing a lawsuit against Omegle, and our case passed. Omegle like trying to get it dismissed on Section 230, that on product liability theory. So that was like case law that was made, and that case ended up settling, and Omegle shut down as a part of that.
Good. Well, also
Yeah.
chat roulette, like there was weird stuff going on there. I remember friends would go on there, have sex, and then just like be a frame, you know?
Oh yeah. I mean, I remember like I used to go on when I was a teenager, me and my friends, and it was like half of it was like talking to other teenagers from like different countries, and then half of it was like screaming at like old dicks on the screen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, no, before mine.
Yeah, and oh my God, I was 17. So people were literally teenagers having underage sex. So that would be like child pornography.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Well, I'm happy that that happened with your case and that you shut that site down, or they did, because that's great that that's not out there, because there is so many things out there on the internet that are terrible. And even Facebook and Meta, like they need more regulations with that too, because of I don't know how many times someone has created accounts about me or bullied me or just created like Army Hammer is like little fan base. They love to make like accounts about me.
It's so weird.
Yeah. And I'm like, please take this down.
Yeah, and like they're awful. And, yeah, the big social media sites are usually the worst with that.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Well, I feel like we got a lot covered today. Is there anything else that I didn't cover that you want me to ask you before we get into the Patreon part?
Oh, I don't know if you want to talk about the OnlyFans.
Yeah, I would. Let's talk about the OnlyFans, and then in the Patreon part, which is like the extended version, which is like kind of my OnlyFans ish
Yeah, yeah.
vibe, you know. I would love to hear how to like keep up with fans only.
Okay. Okay.
But tell me about how telling your story and then turning into taking back your power on fans only.
So I had been really open about what I had been through for so many years and found so much healing through working with victims of similar things, and also getting to work on like legislative side of things, and connecting with other activists around the world who are doing this. Like that has all been so healing. And I think, I started advocating more and more for sex workers to be in the room when we were talking about legislation, for example. Like, if we're talking about legislating porn sites, why don't we have any people who are in porn in the room? We're, talking about decriminalization of sex work if we're talking about sexual violence. And that was, I think, as a result of many things. I think doing this work and meeting all sorts of different people and realizing how something can affect somebody is different depending on what you have going on in your life and who you are. Um, and then also just being in New York City and being part of a really sex positive community and meeting non monogamous people and meeting sex workers and just people of all different walks of life. And I started learning a lot more about sex workers' rights. And the more I advocated for sex workers, the more it made me think about my relationship to sex work. Because I realized that when I would talk about my own story, of course, you always get like people who are going to shame you, right? Shame and blame you. But I noticed that there was generally like my story would be received well, but then like stories of sexual violence to sex workers was not being received in the same way. And I couldn't like understand that, because I was just like, we're on equal footing here, like we're both just people,
Yeah.
and I just realized how much more we need to like advocate for sex workers. So it really made me think about my own decisions and my own relationship with sex work. And I thought, like, well, I'm not like any quote unquote better than a sex worker just because I've never made money off of sexy pictures. I post sexy pictures for free. And then I'm like, well, why am I posting sexy pictures for free? And I find it to be like pretty reclamatory to even just post a sexy picture for free on Instagram, because the patriarchy is always trying to control us as women.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, why don't I start charging for sexy pictures? And the more I thought about it, I realized like it was something that I wasn't allowing myself to even explore for a long time because of what I experienced having my naked pictures posted on the internet without my consent. And so I thought, like, because I'm a survivor of this, I can't do that. But then I realized, like, no, wait, actually, I can. And I think it was like the second episode of my podcast that I spoke with two survivors of image based sexual abuse who then started doing OnlyFans. And I was like, oh, wait, I can do this. And it was this like light bulb moment. And I decided to like sit on that for a while and think about it. And it was almost a year. And as I got closer and closer to like that year mark, and actually my birthday, because my birthday is August 8th, so that was kind of like my thinking of like, I'm gonna make a decision.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, you know what, I can't not do this, because at this point it's like this growing desire in me, and if I don't do it, it's because I'm allowing the patriarchy to control me. And so I decided to launch it my birthday 2023. So it's been
I
almost
love
2 years
that.
now. And it's been such a healing thing for me, like on another level that I didn't even know was possible. Um, and it's just been great to like reclaim my image and like my sexuality in this way. It's my space, right? Like it's my boundaries there.
Yeah.
And of course, like you can't guarantee what people are going to do with those images, but I'm very clear on the fact that like this is my content and it stays here behind the paywall. And if you violate that, then I will get it removed, and I have legal resources at my fingertips. So don't.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. Like I think that that's great that you took back your power that way. And I think that it's great that you're monetizing from that in a sense, and that it's just like you get to get yourself something nice, or even just helps out with rent, and
Yeah,
that's nice.
I say this from like a very privileged place, and I know that for some people they have to do it in order to put food on the table or to like make their rent, and that's great for them, and like I support people no matter what reason they're doing it. But at the end of the day, it was something I started as really a form of reclamation. And it's nice to have the extra cash every month.
Yeah, well, and I think it's safe because I have had so many friends do seeking arrangements and what's your price and all these other apps. And a lot of like the men on there are a little bit dangerous, or they have just, a wife and they're trying to hide stuff so
Yeah, although probably on OnlyFans are the same. Like,
really.
I don't know how many guys have girlfriends or wives. Like,
Well, but like there's exchange, like they're paying you money and
yeah,
seeking arrangements. Like I've gone on like dinner dates before, like in my 20s and
yeah,
stuff, and like these trips, but like you go and you meet up with them, and I just seen situations where the guys are just not great.
yeah, definitely. And like, look, I have friends who are full service sex workers, and there's a lot of like vetting that goes into like screening. I'm sorry.
Yes, that's good.
There's screening that goes into it. But I do think that like anytime you're doing like an in-person interaction, there's some risk involved, right?
Even dating on the apps.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I don't necessarily think that like seeking is going to be more dangerous than like a Tinder date. Like, I don't know. It depends on where you meet and like many different factors.
Absolutely. Well, like, and no shame in the game if like someone out there is doing seeking arrangements or what's your price. Like, I support that fully. Just be safe. I like the apps because I stopped doing the apps because I same thing, weirdos.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love that so much. So where can everybody find your podcast? Where can everybody find CA Goldberg Law?
Yeah, so the podcast is called Oral Arguments, and you can find it wherever you listen to podcasts. So Apple, Spotify, wherever. Oral Arguments Podcast on Instagram. And you can find me, Norma Buster, anywhere on social media. On Instagram, it's Norma Buster underscore, because my stalker ex deleted my Norma Buster handle 10 years ago.
Joy.
So it's Norma Buster underscore. And for our law firm, it's CA Goldberg Law everywhere. You can check us out at cagoldberglaw.com.
Sweet. And what if someone wants to support you on fans only?
Yeah, you can find me on OnlyFans, onlyfans.com/Norma Buster.
Perfect. Sweet. And then we'll get into the Patreon segment. Thank you guys for listening to this episode with Norma Buster. If you liked it, please subscribe on YouTube, leave a great review on Apple Podcasts. 5 stars is always great. It really helps in getting our episodes out there, these survivor stories out there. Also, if you want to check out the foster puppy, check out my video that's coming out in a couple days. And she is available at Barkin' Bitches for adoption. And she is so cute. She's also, less on the dander because she's mixed with that Labradoodle. So check her out at Barkin' Bitches. And until next time, I'm Terra Newell, and thank you for listening to Terra's Baddies Club.